My name is Jowita Wyszomirska, and I am a Baltimore-based artist. Although I'm a transplant, I moved to Baltimore I think it's been about 10 years ago from Chicago, but originally I'm from Poland. I work mostly in drawing, mixed media works on paper, and installation.
What are some of the ways that these pieces interconnect?
So what the connecting point for all these works is kind of one obvious thing is the theme of water kind of throughout the show. But they also, each of the pieces has either a direct connection, is directly rooted to a specific place and encapsulates a landscape. So in all these works, I have attempted to capture a sense of transition, sense of movement, and the coastline is one of those most evident places where that is ongoing, never stopping. So that's kind of why I gravitate, to that specific place so much. That's just a reminder how even when the processes are very slow, everything is always changing. And myself, kind of my own point of view, when I'm kind of thinking about ideas, like the best things come to me when I'm moving, I'm on the move myself, either whether it's walking, running, or biking, or hiking. Those are the times where kind of either it's like maybe that's a conversation with myself about the work, or just the observation of the surrounding kind of is the clearest for me. So it's the capturing those changes in the imagery or how I install the pieces.
What is your process for creating these larger installations versus the difference between that and how you create the wall work that is in this exhibition?
It honestly provides me a really good balance between the two different modes of working. So it's kind of a way for me to engage myself in a much more physical process when it comes down to working on installation. It's a lot of, they're kind of large and they're fast. I actually work very fast. I surprised myself when I started working large on the wall that the more I increased the scale, the faster I got.
Really?
So it's very fast, it's very kind of physical. A lot of the times when I install, I don't get to really see the endpoint. I'm just unable to really put everything up in my studio. So the kind of the finishing touches happen in the space itself. So that kind of provides me, I think, kind of a place where I have to trust myself and trust that process. And I love that because I'll question everything that I make. But typically there is a time frame and there's a stopping, very specific deadline and stopping point where I just need to be finished. And that forces me to work that way, where it's just, I'm done and I have to be done, and that's that. So I like that about working on these large pieces. And the works on paper usually are much slower, very intimate. Well, some of them start in the landscape itself, so the base happens outside. And then they either live on the wall and kind of transition between wall and a table, but it's much slower, kind of much more, I look a lot, I slow down, I sit down, and I just will, they will live around me. And that's why I will make more than one piece at a time. So I have several of them going so that if I'm not working on one, I can kind of start working on another, and then at the same time kind of be looking and thinking about what's going on there. So there's a lot more contemplation and slowness, and for me that really just balances out the whole art process.
What do you do when you're in the field for doing the base? What is that?
So I've been using the process called cyanotype, which is a very quite old photographic process that doesn't really require much any equipment. You just need UV light, so it could be sunlight or it could be artificial light, and there's just two very simple chemical mixture. First, you start with coating the paper, and the paper dries, and then it's ready for exposure. So with these pieces, when I was on the beach, what I did is some of them I would try to kind of grab some or kind of look for exposed roots on the kind of where there's a lot of erosion happening. And honestly, everything happens so fast because of the UV is the strongest on the beach. Typically, I don't remember exactly what I did, so it's like so it's like a blur. But you can see. So once I have the paper prepared. Usually, it's in the tube or in like some kind of flat portfolio, and I'll take it out, and I can definitely, it starts out as like lime green color, but you can see the changes happening, and the way to stop it is to wash it. So I see what's going on. I might play with the waves a little bit, so let the water interact with it, but not completely. And then I'll wash it completely in the waves to stop it. And then usually when I get back to the studio, I'll just rinse it again, so the salt water is rinsed off. But it's a really fun, to me, it's like a fun way to also, there's so much in kind of how I work, control versus no control happening. So I like that start of the process where I feel like I have some control over what's happening, but just like a tiny touch. I know where to push the work, which way I want to do it, but I wouldn't be able to really like repeat the same process again. So I love that spontaneity that happens, and that's like how the piece starts, and then I get to respond to it in the studio.
What inspired you to start hanging these larger installations from the ceiling and creating this depth effect?
I've been obsessed with creating a drawing in space. That's what I've been kind of calling it in my mind for like a number of years now. I'm like a very two-dimensional person, so everything for me starts with drawing or painting and like a flat surface. But there was always this, I guess, I don't know, just a need to involve space, and I love taking up space. So I figured out I could maybe try to do that with 2 dimensions and just blur the line between 2-dimensional work and then 3 dimensions. So kind of the very first step for that was when I jumped from working on paper onto a wall, and I'm like, oh wow, this like whole new world opened up where it felt like the space was engaged and I could really play with providing that more of like a environment experience for people to see it, rather than just kind of more of a window like the works on paper are. So the work lived on the wall for a very long time, and as everything for me, usually my transitions kind of are very slow, and the changes happen kind of slowly. But I was like inching away from the wall. And at first it was just a little bit of the wall, and then a little bit more, and then here it is, like past few shows, it's just like, no, I'm gonna go right in the middle. I'm driven by that kind of spatial component where I wanted the viewers to experience those pieces more on a physical level, where they can kind of walk around and maybe even meander through it, rather than from a set point. And that mirrors, I try to mirror my own experience in the landscape. So like with the water memory, that was just the experience of walking through the glacier and kind of coming up on those unexpected places that were hidden, and kind of experiencing the vastness of it, where I couldn't really tell how far is point A from point B, and everything would just kind of open up, all these crevices would open up as I was walking. With this piece, I mean, this is kind of much more quiet, thinking about that ongoing shift and changes. And everybody's definitely more familiar with this experience of being just on the shore and walking around it or along it. And then just the power, maybe thinking about the power of water and those moments that it's like we become aware of it for just a fraction of a second. Maybe we think about it, we look at it, and then it sort of goes away. It's more in the background, but it's this ongoing thing.
What is your favorite part of creating artwork?
I actually love the whole process from the beginning to the end. So it starts with an adventure. Like, well, not all the time. I don't get to go all the time, but usually, like, kind of each series or each project will start with a place I want to visit, and that's the thing I really love. I love, wandering and going and hiking and backpacking. So, like, having an outlet where I can actually bring those things together and then thinking about the art making and what's going to come of it makes it very exciting for me. And then there's that like gray area, that in-between area when I come back and I start thinking about, oh, what do I do with all this? And for me, it's usually not a very immediate, like, ideas don't come right away. Like, I might think of an idea, but usually those are not very good ideas. So there's a period of time where it's just this like messy studio time where I think I know what I want to do, but then it just turns out like really bad. But it's important. Like, I think, with the water memory, that was about half a year. I spent like half a year, being so in love with this glacier and my experience of the glacier, but the work I was doing was just, it just lives in a very dark drawer right now. But those attempts are really important. I think as an artist, like, I have to make bad work at some point to know what the good work is really. So it's like a whole gamut of emotions. It's fun. I mean, it's fun to like kind of mess around in the studio. It's frustrating. It definitely is a lot of frustration. so there's that like strange stretch of time. And I think it's really crucial, like, for an artist to have that experience of like, I think you have to, at least I know I have to try to trust of what I don't know, of like trust myself that like something's gonna happen eventually, and be okay with not knowing what I'm doing for a while. So that's that period, and usually what happens is, what comes about is there's a looming deadline. And I start to get my act together. And I'm like, okay, I've had those interesting times. I've made some interesting stuff. So then that's like the production area of time where it's kind of usually a lot happens. And it's kind of, I'm setting the questioning aside, and it's more of like a making, and I feel more confident that this is what I need to do. And lastly, it's installing, which is also very special for me because, like I've mentioned before, those pieces are incomplete in a sense because I don't ever install them ahead of time. It's more of like a time and space constraint. I'll usually see the finalized piece when I install it. So that's kind of, those are the finishing touches. The space itself brings really the finishing touches for the installation work.